Marcus slammed on the brakes as the woman in the elaborate white gown threw herself into his back seat, her veil catching in the door. "Drive, please, just drive," she gasped, mascara streaming down her cheeks. He stared at her through the rearview mirror, his 7-year-old son Tyler wide-eyed in the passenger seat, clutching his inhaler. "Ma'am, are you?" Marcus started, but Elena cut him off with desperation in her voice. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I'll pay you $10,000 cash if you get me away from that hotel right now." The sound of angry voices grew louder outside the Grand Texan Hotel as wedding guests spilled onto the sidewalk, searching frantically. Marcus looked at his son, then at the woman who had just turned his ordinary Saturday afternoon into something extraordinary. What would you do if someone jumped into your car, offering more money than you'd seen in years, begging you to help them escape their own wedding? Would you drive away, or would you ask questions first? Marcus Thompson had never imagined his life would require such careful calculations. Every morning at 5:30, he'd wake up in their small duplex apartment in East Austin, quietly preparing coffee while Tyler slept in the bedroom they shared. The walls were thin enough that he could hear Mrs. Chun next door practicing her morning Tai Chi, and the ancient air conditioning unit rattled like a freight train, but it was home. At 32, Marcus found himself living a life he'd never planned, measuring out Tyler's medications with the precision of a pharmacist, checking weather reports obsessively because humidity triggered his son's asthma, and calculating every dollar that came in against the mounting pile of medical bills on their kitchen counter. The transition from middle school music teacher to full-time Uber driver hadn't been a choice so much as a necessity. When the Austin Independent School District cut arts programs 3 years ago, Marcus had watched his dreams of inspiring young musicians evaporate overnight. His teacher's salary had barely covered their basic needs, but it had provided health insurance and stability. Now driving 12 hours a day through Austin's increasingly congested streets, he made slightly more money but with none of the security. His 2015 Honda Civic had 200,000 miles on it, a cracked windshield he couldn't afford to replace, and a sound system that still worked well enough for him to play Tyler's favorite songs during their weekend drives around town. Tyler Thompson was extraordinary in ways that both filled Marcus with pride and broke his heart daily. At 7 years old, he possessed an intuitive understanding of music that reminded Marcus why he'd fallen in love with teaching in the first place. Tyler could hear a melody once and play it back on the small keyboard Marcus had managed to buy from a pawn shop, his small fingers finding harmonies that surprised even his father. But Tyler's brilliance was complicated by challenges that made simple things difficult. His asthma meant that running and playing like other children often left him gasping for breath, and his learning disability made reading and writing frustrating. Exercises that required patience Marcus sometimes struggled to maintain after 14-hour workdays. The medical expenses were relentless. Tyler's inhaler cost $60 every month, his allergy medications another $40, and the specialized tutoring sessions that helped him keep up in school ran $200 weekly. Marcus had applied for every assistance program available, but their combined income fell into that impossible middle ground, where they made too much for aid, but too little for comfort. He'd sold his guitar, his record collection, and everything else of value, but still found himself choosing between groceries and medications more often than he cared to admit. The notebook where he tracked every expense had become a source of anxiety rather than organization, filled with red ink and impossible arithmetic. Tyler's questions about their situation had grown more perceptive lately, his 7-year-old mind beginning to understand that their struggles weren't temporary setbacks, but their reality. He'd stopped asking for things he saw other kids have, learned to make his inhaler last an extra day when money was tight, and developed a quiet maturity that both impressed and worried Marcus. When Tyler's classmates talked about family vacations or new toys, he'd simply listen without contributing, his expressive brown eyes revealing an understanding of their limitations that no child should have to carry. The apartment they called home was a converted garage behind a main house in East Austin, a neighborhood caught between gentrification and its working-class roots. Their space consisted of a combined living room and kitchen, one small bedroom, and a bathroom where the shower pressure barely qualified as more than a drizzle. Marcus slept on a pull-out couch that had seen better decades, giving Tyler the bedroom with its single window that looked out onto their tiny backyard, where a mesquite tree provided shade and a place for Tyler to sit when he needed quiet time. The walls were decorated with Tyler's artwork and school certificates, creating warmth that expensive furniture couldn't provide. Every evening after his driving shift, Marcus would help Tyler with homework at their small kitchen table, the light from a mismatched lamp casting shadows across worksheets that seemed designed to frustrate rather than educate. Reading remained Tyler's biggest challenge, letters seeming to dance and rearrange themselves in ways that made simple sentences feel like puzzles. Marcus had learned patience he never knew he possessed, breaking down each word, celebrating small victories, and hiding his own exhaustion behind encouraging smiles. These moments, difficult as they were, had become precious to him. The quiet intimacy of father and son working together against the challenges the world had handed them. Music remained their shared refuge. Despite selling his good guitar, Marcus had kept an old acoustic instrument that had been his father's, its scratched body and loose tuning pegs testament to decades of use. In the evenings, when Tyler's homework was finished and his breathing treatments completed, they would sit together on their small couch, Marcus teaching him simple chords and melodies. Tyler's natural ear for harmony never failed to amaze him, the child instinctively finding complementary notes that transformed simple songs into something beautiful. In these moments, their cramped apartment felt spacious, their financial worries temporarily forgotten in the magic of music they created together. Part 2. Tyler's condition had worsened gradually over the past year, each Austin summer bringing new challenges as the humidity and cedar pollen created a perfect storm for his respiratory system. What had started as occasional wheezing during physical activity had evolved into daily struggles that required constant vigilance. Marcus had learned to read the subtle signs, the slight tightening around Tyler's eyes when breathing became labored, the way his shoulders would hunch forward when his chest felt constricted, the particular cough that meant they needed to head home immediately. The pediatric pulmonologist at Dell Children's Medical Center had adjusted Tyler's treatment plan 3 times in the past 6 months, each modification bringing new medications and higher costs that stretched their budget beyond recognition. The learning disability diagnosis had come as both a relief and a burden. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. After months of watching Tyler struggle with reading assignments that other children completed effortlessly, finally having a name for his challenges provided clarity about why traditional teaching methods weren't working. But the specialized interventions Tyler needed weren't covered by their basic health insurance, and the waiting list for district services stretched 8 months into the future. Marcus had researched every available option, spent countless hours on phone calls with insurance representatives, and filled out applications for assistance programs that seemed designed to discourage rather than help families in need. Dr. Foster, Tyler's primary physician, had become an unlikely ally in their journey. During their monthly checkups, she would spend extra time reviewing Tyler's progress, adjusting medication dosages, and providing resources that Marcus might not have discovered otherwise. She understood the financial pressures facing single-parent households and often provided sample medications or connected them with pharmaceutical assistance programs. Her gentle manner with Tyler helped ease the anxiety that medical appointments typically triggered. and she had developed creative ways to explain his condition that made the 7-year-old feel empowered rather than limited by his challenges. The tutoring sessions with Mrs. Rodriguez took place twice weekly in a small room at Sunny Meadows Elementary, where Tyler worked on reading comprehension and phonics skills that seemed to elude him during regular classroom instruction. Marcus would sit in the hallway during these sessions, usually catching up on Uber driver forums or researching better insurance options on his phone. Through the thin door, he could hear Tyler's frustration mounting as he wrestled with words that refused to cooperate, followed by Mrs. Rodriguez's patient encouragement and Tyler's determined efforts to try again. These sessions cost $200 each week, money that Marcus earned driving weekend nights when Tyler stayed with their neighbor Jake, sacrificing sleep and time together for the possibility of academic progress. The social implications of Tyler's struggles weren't lost on Marcus. During school pickup, he watched other children chattering excitedly about playdates and birthday parties, while Tyler often stood quietly at the edge of groups, listening but not fully participating. His breathing treatments and dietary restrictions made spontaneous activities difficult, and Marcus worried about the isolation that seemed to be building around his son. Tyler was naturally introverted, preferring quieter activities like drawing and listening to music. But Marcus couldn't distinguish between genuine preference and learned withdrawal from situations that highlighted his differences. Financial stress had become the constant backdrop of their daily existence. Marcus tracked every expense in a worn notebook, calculating whether they could afford Tyler's prescription refills or if they needed to stretch the current medications another few days. Grocery shopping required strategic planning with Marcus, comparing unit prices and clipping digital coupons, while Tyler sat patiently in the cart, having learned not to ask for treats they couldn't afford. The notebook's pages revealed a pattern of robbing Peter to pay Paul, shuffling money between necessities while never quite catching up to their actual needs. Jake Martinez, their 60-year-old neighbor, had become an unexpected blessing in their lives. A retired postal worker who lived alone in the main house, Jake had initially offered to help with Tyler during emergency situations, but gradually became a regular presence in their routine. He possessed infinite patience for Tyler's questions about everything from why airplanes stayed in the sky to how music came out of the radio, and his small workshop behind the house became Tyler's favorite place to explore when his breathing was stable. Jake charged $20 for watching Tyler during Marcus's evening driving shifts, significantly less than professional childcare, but still an expense that required careful budgeting. The income from Uber driving fluctuated wildly based on factors beyond Marcus's control. Austin's festival seasons brought surge pricing and long hours that could generate decent money, but the summer months often meant sitting in traffic for hours between short rides that barely covered gas costs. Marcus had learned the rhythms of the city, understanding which events drew crowds and which neighborhoods generated consistent rides. But the gig economy's unpredictability made long-term planning nearly impossible. His car's maintenance needs competed directly with Tyler's medical expenses, creating impossible choices between keeping their transportation running and keeping Tyler healthy. Tyler's artistic abilities provided bright spots in their challenging routine. His drawings covered their refrigerator and walls, detailed pictures of fantastical creatures and musical instruments that revealed an imagination untouched by their financial constraints. He had an intuitive understanding of color and composition that surprised his teachers, and his artwork often served as conversation starters with other children who admired his creativity. Marcus saved every picture Tyler created, storing them in a folder that had become a record of his son's emotional and artistic development through their struggles. The elementary school's music program had been reduced to one class period per week, but Tyler's teacher had noticed his unusual musical aptitude and encouraged Marcus to nurture this talent. The small keyboard from the pawn shop had become Tyler's prized possession, and he spent hours experimenting with melodies and rhythms that seemed to flow naturally from his fingertips. Marcus would listen from the kitchen while preparing dinner, amazed by the sophisticated harmonies his son discovered through pure experimentation. These musical moments reminded Marcus of his own childhood discovery of music's power to transform ordinary experiences into something magical. Community resources in East Austin provided some relief, though accessing them required navigation of bureaucratic systems that seemed designed to test determination rather than provide assistance. The local food bank operated 2 days per week from a church basement, offering fresh produce and staples that helped stretch their grocery budget. Tyler enjoyed these visits, fascinated by the organized chaos of volunteers sorting donations and the diverse community of families facing similar challenges. Marcus appreciated the lack of judgment in these spaces, where everyone understood the delicate balance required to maintain dignity while accepting help. Sleep had become a luxury that Marcus carefully rationed. After Tyler's bedtime routine of medications, breathing treatments, and reading practice, Marcus would spend another 3 or 4 hours driving for Uber, picking up late-night airport runs and downtown partygoers whose tips sometimes made the difference between paying utilities on time or requesting extensions. He would return home around midnight, set up the couch for sleeping, and wake again at 5:30 to begin another day of careful balance between earning money and caring for Tyler. The chronic exhaustion had become his normal state, punctuated by cups of gas station coffee and brief naps during Tyler's school hours. The weight of single parenthood pressed down on Marcus during quiet moments when Tyler was asleep and the evening's driving shift was complete. He would sit at their small kitchen table, reviewing the day's earnings against upcoming expenses, wondering how other families managed similar challenges. The responsibility for Tyler's future felt enormous and entirely his own, with no partner to share the decision-making or provide backup when emergencies arose. Yet these same quiet moments also filled him with fierce pride in Tyler's resilience and gratitude for the bond they had forged through adversity, stronger than many traditional families he observed during his driving shifts around Austin's wealthier neighborhoods. Elena Blackwell existed in a world where money solved most problems, but created others that no amount of wealth could address. At 29, she commanded respect in Austin's art community as the owner of Meridian Gallery, a contemporary space in the warehouse district that showcased emerging artists alongside established names. Her gallery had become a destination for collectors and art enthusiasts, its industrial aesthetic and carefully curated exhibitions earning recognition in regional arts publications. Yet beneath the professional success and cultural influence lay a web of family obligations and financial pressures that made her privileged position feel more like an elegant prison than a blessing. The Blackwell family fortune traced back 3 generations to oil discoveries in West Texas. But by the time Elena inherited her position, the money came with strings attached that would have made Pinocchio sympathetic. Her father Richard had died when she was 25, leaving behind a complex trust structure designed to preserve family wealth while controlling how it was distributed. The most significant provision required Elena to marry before her 30th birthday, a stipulation that reflected her grandfather's traditional views about family stability and wealth preservation. Failure to comply would result in the trust funds being donated to charity, leaving Elena with only the gallery and enough personal savings to maintain her lifestyle for perhaps 2 years. Victoria Blackwell, her father's sister and the trust's primary administrator, had embraced her role as family matriarch with the enthusiasm of a general planning a military campaign. At 58, Victoria possessed the sharp intelligence and ruthless pragmatism that had helped build the family fortune, but she wielded these qualities like weapons in her determination to control Elena's choices. Victoria viewed the marriage requirement not as an outdated restriction, but as a necessary protection against what she perceived as Elena's impractical artistic tendencies. She had spent the past 4 years orchestrating introductions to suitable men, each carefully vetted for financial stability, social standing, and willingness to embrace the Blackwell family obligations. The trust structure provided Elena with a generous monthly allowance that funded her gallery operations and personal expenses, but the money came with constant oversight from Victoria and the trust's board of advisors. Every significant expenditure required justification. Every business decision was subject to review, and Elena's personal life received scrutiny that would have impressed intelligence agencies. Victoria had access to Elena's financial records, social calendar, and even her art acquisition decisions, treating her niece's autonomy as a privilege to be earned rather than a right to be respected. This surveillance had intensified as Elena's 30th birthday approached, with Victoria scheduling increasingly frequent meetings to discuss suitable marriage candidates and timeline expectations. David Chun represented everything Victoria considered ideal in a potential husband for Elena. At 34, he was a successful technology entrepreneur whose software company had recently gone public, generating the kind of wealth that impressed even the Blackwell family advisors. David was intelligent, cultured, and genuinely interested in Elena's work at the gallery, often attending exhibitions and asking thoughtful questions about the artists she represented. He treated Elena with respect and kindness, never pressuring her for physical intimacy or trying to control her professional decisions. Under different circumstances, Elena might have developed genuine feelings for him, but the knowledge that their relationship served Victoria's agenda poisoned every interaction. With calculated undertones, their courtship had proceeded with the mechanical precision of a business merger. Victoria had arranged their introduction at a charity gala, ensuring they were seated together and encouraging conversations about shared interests in art and travel. David had pursued Elena with consistent attention, sending flowers to the gallery, inviting her to cultural events, and gradually integrating himself into her social circle. Elena appreciated his efforts and enjoyed his company, but she struggled to distinguish between attraction and resignation, wondering if her positive feelings reflected genuine compatibility or simply relief at finding someone tolerable among Victoria's candidates. The engagement had been announced at a family gathering in the Blackwell estate's formal dining room, with Victoria beaming as though she had personally orchestrated a diplomatic breakthrough. David had proposed with a vintage family ring, its enormous diamond and platinum setting reflecting generations of Blackwell wealth and tradition. Elena had accepted because refusing seemed impossible given the financial and social pressures surrounding her, but the ring felt heavy on her finger in ways that had nothing to do with its considerable carat weight. Victoria had immediately begun planning an elaborate wedding, booking the Grand Texan Hotel and hiring coordinators who specialized in events that would be featured in society magazines. Elena's true passion lay in photography, a pursuit she had abandoned under family pressure to focus on more practical applications of her artistic interests. During college at Austin, she had spent countless hours in darkrooms, experimenting with light and shadow to capture emotions that words couldn't express. Her photographs revealed an eye for finding beauty in unexpected places, the texture of weathered building facades, the way afternoon light transformed ordinary street scenes, the expressions of people lost in private moments. She had dreamed of pursuing photography professionally, perhaps documenting social issues or traveling to capture stories that needed telling. But Victoria had dismissed these ambitions as impractical hobbies, unsuitable for someone with Elena's family responsibilities. The gallery had become Elena's compromise between artistic passion and family expectations, allowing her to remain connected to the creative community while building something that generated measurable business success. She had developed relationships with photographers whose work she couldn't pursue herself, living vicariously through their artistic explorations while she managed budgets and courted collectors. The irony wasn't lost on her that she had become successful at selling other people's artistic dreams while abandoning her own. But the gallery also provided moments of genuine satisfaction when she helped emerging artists gain recognition or connected collectors with pieces that truly moved them. Loneliness had become Elena's constant companion despite her busy social calendar and professional success. The knowledge that most people in her orbit were motivated by her family's wealth made authentic connections nearly impossible to establish. She attended charity galas, gallery openings, and cultural events where conversations felt scripted and relationships transactional. Even her friendship with other gallery owners and artists was complicated by the financial advantages her family money provided, creating an uneven playing field that made genuine collaboration difficult. She envied the easy camaraderie she observed among struggling artists, who could trust each other's motives because none of them had significant money to cloud their interactions. The wedding preparations had consumed 6 months of Elena's life, with Victoria micromanaging every detail from the flower arrangements to the guest list. The event was designed to showcase Blackwell family status rather than celebrate Elena's happiness, featuring elaborate decorations, a 7-course dinner, and entertainment that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Elena felt like a prop in Victoria's production, going through the motions of dress fittings and cake tastings while feeling increasingly disconnected from the celebration supposedly centered on her future. The guest list included business associates, social connections, and family friends, but few people who knew Elena well enough to recognize her growing desperation. Sleep had become elusive as the wedding date approached, with Elena lying awake in her luxurious penthouse apartment, questioning every decision that had led to this moment. She would stand on her balcony overlooking downtown Austin, watching traffic lights change patterns and wondering about the lives of people in the cars below. Did they wake up dreading their days? Did they feel trapped by circumstances beyond their control? The city's energy felt vibrant and alive from her 20th floor perspective, but Elena felt disconnected from that vitality, isolated by wealth and family expectations that made spontaneous connections impossible. The morning of the wedding had arrived with perfect weather and flawless execution of Victoria's elaborate plans. Elena sat in the bridal suite at the Grand Texan Hotel, surrounded by hairstylists, makeup artists, and wedding coordinators who treated her like a precious artifact being prepared for display. Her reflection in the ornate mirror showed a beautiful bride wearing a custom gown that cost more than most cars, but Elena could see the panic building behind her carefully applied makeup. Victoria bustled around the suite, checking details and issuing instructions to the army of vendors, while Elena felt her breathing become shallow and rapid as the ceremony time approached. The realization that she was about to commit her life to a marriage based on financial convenience rather than love had crystallized into absolute certainty that she couldn't go through with the charade, regardless of the consequences. Tyler's world revolved around small discoveries that turned ordinary days into adventures. Saturday mornings were his favorite time because Dad didn't have to drive strangers around the city, and they could spend hours together without the constant worry about making enough money for groceries or medicine. On this particular Saturday, Tyler had convinced Marcus to take him to the downtown library, where the children's section had new books about animals and a computer program that helped kids learn to read by playing games. The library was one of the few places where Tyler felt completely comfortable, where his struggles with reading didn't make him different from other children, because everyone was there to learn something new. The Honda Civic rattled slightly as they drove down Congress Avenue, its air conditioning working just hard enough to keep them comfortable in the Austin heat. Tyler pressed his face against the passenger window, watching the tall buildings and busy sidewalks with the fascination of a child who rarely ventured beyond their neighborhood. He had learned to carry his inhaler everywhere, keeping it in a small backpack along with the rescue medications that Dr. Foster had prescribed for emergency situations. The backpack also contained his drawing supplies and a small notebook where He wrote down interesting words he heard adults use, hoping to understand them better when Mrs. Rodriguez helped him with reading during their tutoring sessions. Marcus had planned their library visit around Tyler's medication schedule, ensuring they would be home in time for his afternoon breathing treatment. The nebulizer was an expensive piece of equipment that turned liquid medicine into a fine mist. Tyler could inhale, but it required them to be home for 30 minutes every 6 hours. This schedule dictated their daily routine, limiting spontaneous activities and requiring careful planning for any excursion longer than a few hours. Tyler accepted these restrictions with remarkable maturity, understanding that his breathing was something they had to manage together, like a puzzle they solved every day. The Uber app on Marcus's phone buzzed constantly even on weekends, showing ride requests that represented potential income he couldn't ignore. Each notification created internal conflict between wanting to spend time with Tyler and needing to earn money for their survival. This Saturday, Marcus had promised himself he would ignore the app until evening, giving Tyler his complete attention for once without the distraction of calculating lost earnings. The decision felt both liberating and terrifying, knowing that turning down rides meant they would have less money for Tyler's next prescription refill, but also recognizing that Tyler needed his father's presence more than he needed additional medications they couldn't afford anyway. Tyler's understanding of their financial situation had developed gradually through overheard conversations and observed behaviors. He knew that the notebook on their kitchen counter contained important numbers that made Dad's forehead wrinkle with worry. He had learned not to ask for toys or treats when they went shopping, and he understood that his breathing treatments were expensive because Dad sometimes made phone calls using angry words when talking to the insurance company. Despite his young age, Tyler had internalized responsibility for their family struggles, believing that his medical needs were the reason they had less money than other families. The 7-year-old had developed coping strategies that would have impressed child psychologists. When his breathing became difficult at school, Tyler had learned to find quiet spaces where he could use his inhaler without drawing attention from classmates, who might ask questions he didn't want to answer. He practiced writing letters at home with fierce determination, knowing that his learning disability made schoolwork harder, but refusing to let it defeat him. Tyler's drawings had become increasingly sophisticated, filled with detailed pictures of families doing activities together, always including a father figure, a child, and carefully drawn musical instruments that represented the bond he shared with Marcus. Mrs. Rodriguez had noticed Tyler's artistic abilities during their tutoring sessions, encouraging him to draw pictures that illustrated the stories they read together. This technique helped Tyler connect visual imagery with written words, making reading comprehension easier when he could create mental pictures of the narrative. His drawings revealed an emotional intelligence that surprised adults, showing understanding of complex feelings and relationships despite his struggles with traditional academic subjects. The artwork also provided a window into Tyler's inner world, where family units were always depicted as happy and complete, regardless of their actual composition. Jake Martinez had become an unexpected father figure in Tyler's life, though neither of them spoke about their relationship in those terms. The retired postal worker possessed infinite patience for Tyler's endless questions about how things worked, from car engines to cloud formation, to the way electricity traveled through walls to power their lights. Jake's workshop behind their duplex had become Tyler's sanctuary when his breathing was stable enough for physical activity, filled with tools and projects that captured his imagination. Under Jake's supervision, Tyler had learned to hammer nails, sand wood surfaces, and organize screws by size, activities that built his confidence while teaching practical skills. The workshop visits provided Tyler with masculine guidance that complemented Marcus's nurturing approach to parenting. Jake spoke to Tyler as an equal, explaining complex concepts in simple terms without condescending to his age or learning challenges. Their projects together created tangible results Tyler could be proud of, Small wooden boxes and simple repairs that demonstrated his ability to create something useful with his hands. These accomplishments helped balance the frustration Tyler experienced with academic subjects, showing him that intelligence took many forms and that his particular combination of talents had value. Tyler's social interactions at school were complicated by his medical needs and the family's financial constraints. He couldn't participate in after-school activities that required fees or transportation, and his breathing treatments meant he often had to leave playground games early when exertion triggered his asthma. Other children were generally kind to Tyler, but he had learned to be cautious about forming close friendships that might lead to invitations he couldn't reciprocate or expectations he couldn't meet. His teachers understood his challenges and provided accommodations that helped him succeed academically. But Tyler remained aware that he was different from his classmates in ways that created invisible barriers to full social integration. Music they shared at home had become Tyler's primary source of joy and self-expression. The old acoustic guitar that had belonged to Marcus's father produced sounds that seemed to calm Tyler's breathing when nothing else worked. He had learned simple chord progressions that he could play while Marcus sang, creating harmonies that filled their small apartment with warmth and connection. Tyler's natural musical ability surprised everyone who heard him play, including Mrs. Rodriguez, who had suggested that Marcus explore music therapy as an additional treatment for Tyler's learning challenges. Music also provided Tyler with a language for expressing emotions he couldn't articulate through words. When frustrated by reading assignments or embarrassed by his breathing difficulties, Tyler would sit at the small keyboard and experiment with melodies that reflected his feelings. Marcus had learned to interpret these musical conversations, understanding when Tyler's playing revealed sadness, excitement, or contentment. The keyboard had become Tyler's voice in ways that spoken words couldn't match, allowing him to communicate complex emotions through rhythm and harmony. The father-son bond between Marcus and Tyler had been forged through shared challenges that required constant collaboration and mutual support. Tyler had learned to recognize the signs of Marcus's exhaustion and would quietly entertain himself during those times when Dad needed rest. Marcus had developed an intuitive understanding of Tyler's physical and emotional needs, reading subtle cues that indicated breathing problems or learning frustration before Tyler himself recognized the symptoms. Their relationship operated with the efficiency of a well-practiced team, each member understanding their role in maintaining their family stability and happiness. Saturday library visits represented freedom from the constraints that usually governed their schedule. Tyler could explore books without the pressure of reading assignments, and Marcus could observe his son's natural curiosity without worrying about lost income or medical appointments. The children's section became a neutral space where Tyler's learning challenges didn't define him, where he could discover stories through pictures and ask questions without judgment. These visits also provided Marcus with glimpses of the teacher he used to be, watching Tyler learn and grow in an environment designed to nurture intellectual development rather than measure academic performance against standardized expectations. The intersection of Congress Avenue and Fifth Street buzzed with typical Saturday afternoon energy when Marcus received the ride request that would alter the trajectory of his and Tyler's lives forever. The notification appeared on his phone screen just as they were leaving the library, Tyler clutching a book about dolphins that he hoped to understand better with his father's help. Marcus hesitated, his finger hovering over the accept button while Tyler waited patiently beside the car. The pickup location showed the Grand Texan Hotel, likely a wedding guest needing transportation to the airport or another celebration venue. The surge pricing indicated high demand in the area, which meant this single ride could earn enough to cover Tyler's medication costs for the next week. Tyler sensed his father's internal struggle and looked up with the understanding that had developed through years of watching Marcus make difficult choices between immediate needs and long-term stability. "It's okay, Dad," Tyler said quietly, his small hand reaching for his inhaler as a precautionary measure. We can read the dolphin book at home." The simple acceptance in his son's voice made Marcus's decision easier, and he accepted the ride. Request while helping Tyler into the passenger seat where he could monitor his breathing during the drive to the hotel. The Grand Texan Hotel occupied an entire city block, its limestone facade and elaborate architecture, representing the kind of luxury that existed in a different universe from Marcus and Tyler's daily reality. Valets in crisp uniforms directed. Expensive cars through a circular driveway adorned with fountains and landscaping that probably cost more than Marcus earned in several months. Wedding guests in formal attire moved through the hotel's grand entrance, their laughter and animated conversations creating an atmosphere of celebration that felt foreign to someone whose primary concern was making rent payments on time. Marcus pulled into the designated rideshare pickup area, checking his phone for additional passenger information while Tyler pressed his face against the window to observe the elaborate scene unfolding around them. The hotel's opulence fascinated the 7-year-old, who had never seen buildings with marble columns and crystal chandeliers visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Do rich people live here?" Tyler asked with genuine curiosity, not understanding the concept of hotels as temporary accommodations for special events. The passenger's name appeared as Elena B., with a note requesting immediate pickup and no specific destination entered into the app. Marcus had learned to be cautious about rides without clear destinations, as they sometimes resulted in complicated situations or passengers who changed their minds about traveling. However, the surge pricing and their current financial pressures made declining the ride impractical, regardless of potential complications. He texted the passenger to confirm their location and waited while Tyler continued his fascinated observation of the wedding guests moving through the hotel's entrance. Elena's escape from the bridal suite had required careful timing and a determination that surprised even her. She had waited until Victoria stepped out to coordinate with the photographers, then quickly gathered the cash she kept in her purse for emergencies and slipped out through a service corridor that led to the hotel's main lobby. The elaborate wedding gown made inconspicuous movement impossible, but Elena moved with purpose through the hotel's marble hallways, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and liberation that made every step feel like a declaration of independence. The lobby's grandeur suddenly felt oppressive rather than impressive, its soaring ceilings and ornate decorations representing the suffocating expectations that had brought her to this desperate moment. Elena could hear voices from the wedding party searching for her, Victoria's sharp commands cutting through the ambient noise of hotel staff and guests. The realization that she was actually following through with her escape plan created a surreal sense of detachment, as if she were watching someone else's life unfold rather than actively participating in her own rebellion against family obligations. Marcus spotted the woman in the wedding dress before she reached his car, her elaborate gown and obvious distress creating a scene that drew stares from other hotel patrons. Tyler's eyes widened as he watched Elena approach their vehicle, her veil trailing behind her and her makeup showing signs of recent tears. "Dad, why is the princess crying?" Tyler whispered, his child's perception immediately recognizing the emotional turmoil beneath Elena's composed exterior. Elena wrenched open the car door and threw herself into the backseat with an urgency that made the Honda's worn interior seem like a sanctuary. "Drive, please, just drive," she gasped, her voice carrying desperation that transcended social boundaries, and spoke directly to Marcus's protective instincts. He stared at her through the rearview mirror, taking in the sight of a woman whose expensive gown and jewelry couldn't disguise the raw fear in her eyes. Tyler turned in his seat to get a better look at their unexpected passenger, his natural curiosity overcoming any sense of adult social awkwardness. "Are you okay, lady?" he asked with the direct honesty that children possess before learning to navigate complex social situations. "You look really sad, even though you're wearing a pretty dress." Elena's eyes met Tyler's through the chaos of her escape, and something in his innocent concern penetrated the panic that had consumed her thoughts. "I'll pay you $10,000 cash if you get me away from that hotel right now," she said to Marcus, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands as she reached into her purse to show him the money she had brought for exactly this possibility. Marcus felt Tyler's eyes on him as he processed Elena's offer, the amount of money she mentioned representing more than he typically earned in several months of driving. The moral implications of accepting payment from someone in obvious distress competed with the practical reality that $10,000 could solve their immediate financial problems and provide Tyler with medical care they couldn't currently afford. "Ma'am, are you in some kind of danger?" Marcus asked, his concern for her welfare overriding his amazement at her financial offer. The sound of raised voices grew louder outside the hotel as wedding guests and staff members began searching the grounds for the missing bride. Elena could see Victoria's distinctive silhouette through the hotel's glass doors, her aunt's posture radiating the controlled fury that Elena had learned to fear during childhood. "Please," Elena repeated, her voice breaking slightly as the reality of her situation fully hit her. "I just need to get away from here. I can't go through with this wedding. I can't marry someone I don't love just because my family expects it." Tyler reached for his inhaler as he sensed the tension building inside the car, his young respiratory system responding to stress in ways that had become automatic over years of managing his condition. The slight wheeze that accompanied his breathing drew Elena's attention away from her own crisis, her natural empathy responding to his obvious medical needs despite her personal turmoil. Marcus made his decision with the swift certainty that had carried him through 3 years of single parenthood and financial struggle. He put the car in drive and pulled away from the Grand Texan Hotel, watching through his mirrors as wedding guests spilled onto the sidewalk behind them, their search becoming more frantic as Elena's escape became apparent. "Where do you want to go?" he asked, his voice calm despite the surreal nature of their situation. Elena realized she hadn't planned beyond the escape itself, her focus so concentrated on leaving the wedding that she hadn't considered what came next. "I don't know," she admitted, her hand still shaking as she counted out cash to hand to Marcus. "Somewhere they won't find me. Somewhere I can think about what to do next." Tyler watched this exchange with fascination, his 7-year-old mind processing the adult drama unfolding around him with surprising insight. "Dad, she needs help," he said quietly, his natural empathy responding to Elena's distress in ways that transcended their obvious differences in social status and circumstances. "Maybe we should take her somewhere safe." The simplicity of Tyler's observation cut through the complexity of their situation, reminding Marcus that helping someone in crisis was more important than analyzing the potential consequences of their involvement. He glanced at Elena through the rearview mirror, seeing past her expensive wedding attire to recognize the fundamental human need for compassion and assistance that connected all people regardless of their financial circumstances. Elena found herself studying the father and son in the front seat, noting the obvious bond between them and the way Marcus automatically monitored Tyler's breathing while navigating Austin traffic. The car's interior showed signs of careful maintenance despite its age, and she could see medical supplies in the door pocket nearest Tyler's seat. Their kindness toward a stranger in crisis revealed character qualities that Elena rarely encountered in her usual social circles, where relationships were often complicated by financial considerations and social expectations. "What's your name?" Tyler asked, turning to face Elena with the direct friendliness that made adults remember why they had once believed in the fundamental goodness of human nature. His question broke through the formal distance that Elena's wealth and wedding attire had created, establishing a personal connection that made their unlikely encounter feel less surreal. "Elena," she replied, surprised by how good it felt to introduce herself without the Blackwell family name that usually preceded any social interaction. "What's your name?" "I'm Tyler, and this is my dad Marcus," Tyler responded with pride, his obvious affection for his father evident in his tone. "We were at the library learning about dolphins. Did you know they can hold their breath for 15 minutes underwater? I can only hold mine for about 30 seconds because I have asthma." Elena smiled despite her emotional turmoil, charmed by Tyler's ability to find wonder in everyday facts while casually mentioning his medical condition, as if it were simply another interesting detail about himself. "That's amazing about the dolphins," she said, her voice becoming steadier as she focused on Tyler's enthusiasm rather than her own crisis. "I didn't know that. Do you like learning about animals?" Marcus listened to their conversation while driving toward Zilker Park, instinctively choosing a destination that felt safe and public without being overly crowded. The interaction between Tyler and Elena surprised him with its natural ease, as if his son's innocence had the power to cut through social barriers that normally kept people like them separated from people like her. The $10,000 Elena had given him sat on the passenger seat like a tangible representation of the gap between their worlds. More money than Marcus had ever held at one time, but apparently a casual amount for Elena to carry in her purse. The weight of their financial need made accepting her payment feel both necessary and uncomfortable, as if he were taking advantage of her crisis rather than providing a legitimate service. Tyler's breathing had stabilized as the tension in the car decreased, his natural resilience allowing him to adapt to their unusual situation with remarkable composure. He continued asking Elena questions about herself, his curiosity genuine and unfiltered by the social conventions that might have made an adult hesitant to engage with someone whose circumstances were so obviously different from their own. Elena found herself answering Tyler's questions honestly, telling him about the art gallery she owned and her love of photography, subjects that felt authentic compared to the scripted responses she usually gave at social events. Tyler's genuine interest in her work reminded Elena of why she had been drawn to the arts in the first place, before family obligations and financial pressures had complicated her relationship with creative expression. As they reached Zilker Park, Marcus realized that accepting Elena's money had created an obligation that extended beyond simple transportation. She had trusted them with her crisis, and Tyler's immediate acceptance of her had created a bond that couldn't be easily dismissed once they reached their destination. The afternoon that had begun as a routine library visit had transformed into something that might change all their lives in ways none of them could yet understand. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.